Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our monthly public educational meeting at Los Angeles Norml. Today, we are really honored to have some very exciting guests joining us to share their knowledge and experience as we discuss authentic seed genetics, commercial cultivation in California, and how you too can grow at home if you're living in a municipality that allows for home cultivation. So home cultivation is an absolutely crucial part of the legalization movement, and people should know how to grow their own medicine. Today, we aim to educate you on how commercial cannabis is grown, but also to demonstrate that this is something that you too can do yourself, and we really encourage you to try. So before we get started with the educational portion of our program today, I'd like to recognize the team here at Los Angeles Norml that is responsible for everything that we do. I'd also like to let you know that Los Angeles Norml is an all-volunteer, nonprofit, 501c3 organization. So it's important to remember that everyone on the team here is volunteering their time to push forward with the much needed reform to our cannabis laws here in Los Angeles, California, and at the national level. And we would really appreciate your financial support. Please do consider becoming a card-carrying member of Los Angeles Norml for only $4.20 per month by visiting us at lanorml.org. So our team consists of the legendary Bruce Margolin, who founded Los Angeles Norml in 1973 and is our director emeritus. Elizabeth Mack, RN, is our director of health and wellness. Hirsch Jane is our director of government affairs. Stephanie Uwe is our deputy director of government Affairs. Brett Macomber is our Director of Technology. Nicholas Castelli is our Director of Communications. Eric Gopel, our Director of Veterans Affairs. Dr. Swathi Varanasi is our Director of Science. Louis Rivera, our Director of Social Equity. Maha Huck, our Director of Education. Calvin Harris, our Director of Strategy and Development. And Ryan Barrier is our Deputy Director of Sustainable Energy Solutions. My name is Ian Rassman, and I'm the Executive Director here at Los Angeles Norml, and your truly grateful host for today. So to kick off our exciting program today, I'd like to introduce you all to my friend Todd McCormick. Todd, come on camera. So Todd is a former cancer patient who started using cannabis in 1979 under his mother's supervision while undergoing chemotherapy and radiation. Todd overcame the cancer and went on to become a lifetime advocate for medical cannabis. In 1984, Todd started cultivating cannabis and has never stopped. Starting in 1994, Todd worked with Jack Herrera as an editor of The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and after Jack's passing, he released the 12th edition of the book with memorials to Jack. Now, shortly after the passage of California's Proposition 215 that allowed for the cultivation of medical cannabis, the federal government decided to utilize Todd to make a big statement against California's new legislation. Nearly 100 agents showed up at his house and Todd was arrested. He was indicted for cultivating and possessing marijuana with the intent to distribute under federal law. Todd went to jail for a long time for growing a plant. Now, through his company, Authentic Genetics, Todd provides the unique genetics that span his more than 35 years of experience of breeding and selection. His collection preserves what he calls the primary colors of cannabis, where you will find Original Skunk #1, Northern Lights #5, OG Kush, and many others. I had the good fortune to meet Todd sometime in the mid-90s, and I'm honored that we've remained connected over the years, and I'm truly thrilled to welcome him back to our show again. Todd, thank you for coming today and for sharing your extensive knowledge of genetics with us.
Thanks, Ian. You make it sound kind of dramatic when you lay it out quite like that. But I think home growing's been a struggle. I find it odd that we're having a conversation about our right to literally grow a flower. Seems a little ironic. So here we are. But yeah, I went to jail for a very long time.
Yes, you did. And that was a true travesty. Of course, now, things are different now. A lot different. Yeah. Not different enough, as we know.
No, unfortunately, the struggle is not over, but we still really have to fight for our right to, home grow. I think it's a major source of independence, and it's where, the basic, fabric of our liberty lies. I mean, a lot of people want to talk about America being such a great free country, and I've always joked, really, go plant some hemp in your front yard and tell me how long it takes for that freedom to evaporate. But things are getting better now, and now everybody in the state of California has a legal right to grow 6 plants, which is a huge um, advancement. And people who are medical can still grow as much as reasonable for their medical need, because obviously 6 plants isn't enough to grow enough medicine for a year for somebody who needs it for like a chronic pain, like I use it or whatever. So I think that, learning how easy it is to grow cannabis and getting involved is really where it's at. I started off inspired when I was only 13 by a Mel Frank grow book. I had picked it up and realized that I had the fluorescent lights in the basement. They were my grandma's, and she had the pots and the soil and the watering can. And I even used her old laundry lines in order to hang up the lights. And I found everything I needed. The only thing that she didn't have was fertilizer. And when I realized that, I suddenly realized why all of her houseplants died, because she never fed them. So it took me a while to warm up to the idea of being able to teach my grandmother the importance of plant food, but it was something that happened later on. But anybody can get started growing, usually with the things that they could find in their own house.
True enough. Thanks for putting that message out there that people should give this a try. How old were you when you first started?
I was 13.
13. So there you go. So
but
15 years old.
I'd already had cancer 10 times at that age, and I've already been using cannabis medically since I was about 9, going through chemo and radiation. So I don't want people to think that it was completely irresponsible behavior. In fact, now that I've learned more about the endocannabinoid system, I only wish that I had cannabinoid-based medicine at an even younger age to help with the pain and the appetite suppression from the chemotherapy and a lot of the other things I went through as a cancer patient in the 70s.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. That this truly has been just really from day one a medical mission for you. It's always been about that. I know it's always
I got my first tumor when I was 2 years old. My spine is fused together. The first 5 vertebrae are fused and have been since 72. It's always uncomfortable. And cannabis helps with that. I have not used opiates probably since I was a little kid and I was in the hospital. And when I was around 12, my parents gave me a mini bike and I was riding trails and my neck would hurt because I had a big helmet on. And when I went to my pediatrician at the time, he told me, look, I don't want to see you addicted to opiates. And he made a joke and said, you could smoke your mom's pot. And I thought, that's crazy. And he was like, it's not, he literally, I remember him saying, it's not your worst option. And that has led a lifetime of using cannabis, not using opiates. And I feel that it's been better. And this is why I truly encourage everybody to grow their own. I like to remind people that cannabis, doesn't come in a jar. It's a lot, more rewarding to be able to like put love and put energy into your own plants, and you get much more at the end of it. And, we shouldn't be afraid of a flower anymore. It's a little ridiculous that we let the powers that be convince us that a flower should be illegal and that we should be so afraid of the consequences of growing a plant that we don't grow the plant. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing that you could really lay out.
Yeah, I agree. This is why home cultivation is so important, because it's important to break the stigma. You can do this at home, people. You can.
Yes, most states have home cultivation laws that have passed. Even New York has it, which is great, which really disheartened me because some of the bigger cannabis corporations were actually fighting to exclude home grow provisions from the state law because they saw it as competition. And I think that's totally screwed. And I think the best way we can give corporations some complications is by growing it ourselves and, helping the price structure drop, because everybody, every cop, every prosecutor, every judge, every jailer that's ever locked me up for cannabis has an endocannabinoid system and would benefit from understanding that and learning more about it so that they, can live a happier, longer, more balanced life. Because, obviously we all die in the end, but we can make this experience as positive as possible. And I think cannabis is one of these very human tools on this planet, just like broccoli and potatoes and salt and pepper, that makes our life better.
Todd, so I'm not sure if the average consumer really knows what genetics are. Would you possibly explain that a little bit for us and maybe give us a brief history of genetics and what are genetics? What should the average consumer know about genetics?
In a nutshell, the modern cannabis industry has been driven from what we call landrace varieties. In the 50s, when we first went into Vietnam, our GIs in the early 60s were coming back with Laos and Cambodian and Thai and Vietnamese cannabis. And then later on, things like Colombian, and also Acapulco Gold, Michoacan, some of those varieties in the 60s started coming up. In the 70s, the hippies were taking the hippie trail, which spanned from London all the way to India, and it went through Afghanistan. And this was before the conflict, and a lot of the hippies were coming back with seeds derived from Afghanistan, which was a more northern part of the planet, whereas most of the earlier varieties were more tropical and had a narrow leaflet. These were broadleafs, and they've harvested sooner, and it really revolutionized growing. It made it possible to grow cannabis in more northern climates like Northern California and Oregon and Washington, which changed the game. Then in the 70s and into the 80s, a lot of these narrow leaf drug varieties and broadleaf drug varieties, what we call indica and sativa, started being hybridized, and that created a lot of the modern cannabis we have today. Now we have a plethora of different, distinctly different terpene varieties, everything from citrusy to gassy to sweet to fruity. It's really quite incredible, and we're going to only see more of them develop.
Thank you, thank you. So you mentioned growing in California. I was going to ask you, are there specific seed genetics that are specially adapted to our California climate and grow season? And, since we have a large audience from California, do you have any genetic recommendations for people that are looking to grow in different parts of the states? Is there something that's going to work particularly well, like in LA, where I am, versus San Francisco, where you are?
Well, Southern California is unique where it's semi-tropical almost. You have near perfect weather all year long, so you could grow even the longest tropical flowering varieties such as Original Haze, because you'd be able to finish them all the way into December if they decided to take that long outdoors. The closer to the equator you get, the longer the plant will take to flower. The more northern genetics are, the shorter the flowering time, and that span is like 7 to 16 weeks, I would say. And when you're in California, a lot of what you see growing here is plants that flower in under 9 weeks time. 10 weeks is a pretty long flowering cycle for California, because most people try to get their harvest down by September, early October. A lot of the older varieties like Original Haze I mentioned already kind of were phased out because of the drug war and people needing as quick of a harvest as possible so that they could get in and get out, so to speak. But that's changing, and I invite people like that live in San Diego and LA, and especially inland a bit, to play with some of the more tropical varieties that are mold and mildew resistant, like Original Haze and the varieties from it, because it's just more acclimated to a longer flowering season. As you get up north of San Francisco, you're going to be limited to more shorter varieties, more of the Afghan influenced varieties that will flower quicker and yield faster. But the only drawback is if you're in a microclimate that's moist, what can actually happen is you can have buds that develop quickly, and then you get a little bit of mold inside of the bud. So you really want to try to find, and you can only do it through experimentation, varieties that have acclimated well to your surroundings. So I tell people to try to get cuttings from their friends who have been successfully growing outdoors in the same area, to maybe try the varieties that are already working in their locale. But if they want to try new seeds, it's always an experiment, somewhat like buying a lottery ticket. You hope to get the real perfect plant that you want to keep forever. But a lot of plants, 1 in 1,000 is worth keeping. When it comes to avocados, it's even more crazy, like 1 in 50,000 is worth keeping. So a lot of it is just trial and error.
Oh, interesting. Well, you would know that after 35 years of doing this. So can you tell us, why is it important to have good seed genetics and to understand those genetics when you're growing? I think you've hit on a couple of those points.
What I'm doing is trying to provide a lot of the original genetics from the original breeders to people, because I'm fortunate, I'm old, I've been around a while, and a lot of my friends are like Skunkman Sam is the guy that bred original, happy 420 by the way, almost. And he's the guy that bred Skunk Number 1, and he saved Original Haze. And Mel Frank, who's credited with things like Afghani 1 and Durban Poison, and Greg McAllister, who's in his 70s now as well, and he's responsible for giving Northern Lights to a gentleman named Neville back in 1984, which really revolutionized indoor growing. And these guys are all my friends, and a lot of them want to see the genetics in the community. And a lot of them are disheartened. They don't want to see cannabis corporations that showed up in the past, 5 minutes, acting like they invented varieties that have literally been around, in some cases like haze, for 50 years. It was originally bred in the Santa Cruz Mountains in 1969. Skunk One was in the mid 70s, along with Northern Lights varieties as well. And what I'm trying to do is basically skip over many decades of amateur breeding and go back to what made these varieties great, and really right from the source. It's like anything that you're trying to get a pedigree line of, you want to get it close to the source of originality as possible. And that's what I've tried to do. And a lot of these varieties that I've mentioned have been bred together to become the primary colors of today. The cannabis, the OG Kush is the old Northern Lights #2. Cookies is a cross with Durban Poison. I could go on, but everything we have now is standing on the backs of the breeders that were around us just 20, 30 years prior.
Wow, that's just amazing amount of history in here. So Todd, would you tell us a little bit about your Authentic Genetics seed company, and some of the truly unique genetics that you have available, and then how do people find your website?
Just go to agseedco.com, and there's descriptions and everything. I have a pretty varied selection of cannabis. I have the original Skunk One, original Haze. This year I'm going to be releasing the original Northern Lights #5, a Purist Indica, which is a pure Afghan plant from the same family. Another one called that looks like a duck foot. It's pretty interesting, wide leaf Afghan variety. What I'm trying to do is, kind of get these into the hands of the community. A lot of people that are younger now, new breeders, are going to come along and take these colors and create their own art. And I'm trying to facilitate that. I see myself more like a Crayola crayon than I do, a Van Gogh, if you will, because I'm trying to supply the colors to people so they can do what we did. I was really fortunate over the last 30 years, and I've had good friends, and I've been able to play with these plants and make my own medicine, and I've been able to retain my health and, I'd like to think my good spirits, but and I'm hoping to pass that on. I hope everybody can benefit from these genetics that have been floating around, and I feel very honored to be a bridge between these old breeders and the newer generation.
Wow. Todd, I always learn so much from you every time I see you. And what everybody may not know about you is that you've been an activist for a very long time. You talked about being, you got into this in the 70s. And so the importance of your many decades of service and activism to the legalization efforts here in California simply can't be overstated. And I really want to thank you for that. And I'd like to ask you to remain with us for a few minutes in the wings for a short time, and come back on for some question and answer time. And I'm going to bring in our next guest, and then I want to circle back with you all together.
That's
here.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Todd. So now I am pleased to introduce you all to Ashton Howard, the master cultivator at Ball Family Farms. So after overcoming significant challenges and adversity to get licensed, Ball Family Farms is a success story in Los Angeles' social equity program. Their flower is handcrafted from the finest raw and organic nutrients, cultivated with meticulous attention to detail. Each component of their genetics are pheno-hunted, developed and produced in-house to the most precise standards. Ball Family Farms currently offers 3 premium indoor strains: Daniel LaRusso, a hybrid, Bonsai, a sativa, and Miyagi-Do, an indica. So as their name implies, Ball Family Farms is a family-run company. And I'd like to tell you something truly special about Ball Family Farms and why they really mean so much to us here at Los Angeles Norml. So Ball Family Farms has been a very enthusiastic supporter of our Compassionate Care in California program. They have been donating life-sustaining medicine to those patients in our community most in need of compassionate care. And I just can't overstate what an important and valuable service that they're providing to our community here in Los Angeles. These are truly the good people right here. So please help me give a warm welcome to Ashton, the master cultivator at Ball Family Farms.
Hi guys, thanks for having me on.
Just thrilled to welcome you here, Ashton. So would you tell us a little bit about the history of Ball Family Farms and how it all came together and got started? I mean, there's a big story here. I know you told me personally, but let's get that story out there. It's great stuff.
Yeah, of course. So Chris Ball is the founder of Ball Family Farms, and he was able to acquire his social equity license because he was arrested for cannabis. He went to prison for it, and then Los Angeles offered this social equity reform for people who had been to prison for cannabis related crimes. So him and his brother Chuck went down to the city hall, applied for their license, and miraculously they got one. Now, Chris is a distributor. He's not so much a cultivator, although he dabbles. But when they got their license, it was a series of trial and errors on their first couple runs, and I actually got involved with them because a good friend of mine has a pesticide, all organic and natural pesticide company, and they were buying just way too much, and he to the point where he felt bad selling it to him. He's like, "Hey guys, maybe let me introduce you to somebody that might be able to turn the tides here on some of these problems you're having." Which is where I came in and I met Chris and got involved with Ball Family Farms. I've been growing cannabis for about 20 years myself, all through the Prop 215 days in Santa Cruz. Did a lot of outdoor and greenhouse up there, using a lot of like the old school, OGs, Blue Dream, through that whole era. And then came down to Los Angeles, did some indoor cultivation in the Prop 215 realm with TLC and a couple other dispensaries that no longer exist. But then I met Chris, and I have a pretty extensive genetic repertoire. I guess I would say I've kind of grown everything at this point. So for us, it was what is the market demanding right now in recreational cannabis and medical cannabis. A lot of it is purple varieties that are gassy or creamy. So we did a lot of breeding to select for stuff that contain stuff cookies and gelato type phenos, which are really popular right now. We also created a couple citrus varieties, which we have a Bruce Leroy also, which is a kind of a hybrid between a citrusy lemon variety and a Skittles indica variety. So we made that one. And then we have the bonsai tree, which is our sativa version. That Now it's interesting because right now the market all wants purple colored cannabis. And it's almost kind of unfortunate because there's just so much good cannabis and good terpenes and good things that are almost getting bottlenecked right now with our modern breeding. So for me, and building on the back of people like Todd, like I'm always trying to collect old genetics and cross them into these newer varieties that people like, to try to keep the genetic diversity alive. Uh, so we have a pheno hunting room that we do. We're always running new seeds and making our own hybrids of those seeds, and then like Todd was saying, we do 600 to 800 plant pheno hunts every time, and if we're lucky, we get two keepers in that whole room. So we're very, very meticulous on our our terpenes, the way the terpenes come out, and as well as the different other cannabinoids, THC, CBD, CBG, all the other ones that are coming up. So it's really exciting, actually. And testing, has been a great thing with the recreational legalization. It's one of the really good things that came out of it, is we're now really able to like get down to terpene analysis and THC analysis and CBD analysis, and really kind of start to trace back to, where did this plant come from? In a world where there's just so many clones going around with so many different names, you can actually kind of start to pinpoint, okay, this is an OG Kush variety. Okay, this is a cookies variety. Okay, this is a haze variety. So that's really exciting for me. And then moving forward out of that, I'm a big believer in organically produced cannabis. I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of different methods, but for me, and to make it truly medicine, I really, really believe that the organic approach is the best, especially for people trying to grow at home. I would really recommend, instead of investing a bunch of money in a hydroponic system that costs 5 times as much and it looks fancy, but just really all you need is a pot of soil and some good all-purpose organic fertilizer. I could go on and on about the different methods of cultivating organically, but I would really just recommend a pot of soil, like a good all-purpose 555 or 463 fertilizer. I don't want to like name drop any brands, but just anyone that's producing a mainstay fertilizer is pretty much all you need. And then one thing that California did for us that's actually great is they didn't put any size limit on growing 6 plants. So, you could either do them in 2-gallon pots or you could do them in 200-gallon pots, depending on how much space you have. So I would recommend the bigger, the better. The bigger you can get the plant, the healthier it's going to be. And the more medicine you're going to get off it. You don't have to create as many cycles in order to get more medicine. So that's a huge benefit.
Grow a beastie. If you're going to grow one, grow it big. Especially
Exactly.
as Todd mentioned earlier, we're here in Southern California. It's really hard to find a better spot to grow outdoors like LA. So Ashton, I think that most consumers really have no idea how their cannabis is grown. Like Todd said earlier, it doesn't come in a jar. It's not how it's grown in a jar. So, and I've been to your cultivation facility and I've seen for myself the real love and energy that goes into the creation of your medicine. Could you talk a little bit about the grow process and perhaps educate us on what you think the average consumer should know about how their commercial cannabis is typically grown in California?
Of course, yeah. In Los Angeles, they only allow indoor cultivation. So a lot of the cannabis being produced in Los Angeles on the recreational and commercial levels is all hydroponic indoor, which it produces a look that a lot of consumers like because it produces these very big, dense, bulbous buds. But when you actually get down and you smoke those versus smoking what we produce and what I recommend everyone produces for themselves is organic soil product, you will see a huge difference in the terpenes and the actual effects of the plant. Um, it a lot of people tell me it just feels cleaner because people can't quite put a much on other than that, but you don't get a burnout phase. A lot of this hydroponic cannabis, and being an avid smoker myself, I've kind of dabbled in all these different methods, but I feel that you get the medicinal effect, and then it just kind of tapers off, and there's no low to it. There's no feeling the need to like go take a nap afterwards. And even with indica varieties, which is interesting, what we do specifically is we use a lot of compost teas to try to activate our microbes to break down actual carbon based nutrients, so that, because the cannabis being such a fast growing plant, you really, really need to activate your microbes to get the plant to have the structure and the marketability that we're looking for. So that's a huge tool that we use is to break down our nutrients as fast as possible so that the plant can absorb it. So we're really big on that. We're really big on using beneficial insects as opposed to pesticides whenever possible, if we ever get a pest infestation. If it's beyond that, we only use essential oil pesticides. So it's probably better than what you're putting in your shampoo, or on your head. And the state, actually, the testing is very, very, very scrupulous. We were having a conversation actually when you guys came to the facility. about different pesticides and how prevalent they are in buildings, not even from the cultivator using them, but just because you have a flower nursery next door, or perhaps someone try to bug bomb the building for roaches before you even came in there. And then these random chemicals are popping up in your cannabis. It's very, very interesting. And the testing is now to parts per billion and parts per trillion. So there's no room to cheat the system anymore. It's all just good, clean product now.
That's truly one of the good things that's come out of our legalization effort is some testing. I know, many people that like to grow for sure like to grow organically, and they don't want to use any pesticides, and it's water and sunshine and some fish emulsion, and keep it at that. So it's great to hear that so much testing goes into it. So Ashton, I was going to ask you if you had any advice for first-time home growers. You kind of hit upon it a little bit. You said a pot, some soil. What else did they need to, as you mentioned, commercially it's indoors, but depending on your municipality, which is slightly different all over California, you may be able to grow outdoors.
Well, for outdoor cultivation, genetic selection is kind of everything, as Todd touched on, growing a variety that'll work in your climate zone. Especially further north, things that aren't resistant to botrytis and powdery mildew are not good decisions. You will definitely get powdery mildew and botrytis on your plants later in the season. So anything that finishes early is preferably September. October, first week of October would be the best. Kind of those varietals. So hazes are kind of out of the question. You really want more indica dominant types. Down here in Los Angeles, we have a later growing season, so you can do more sativa dominant varietals. I really recommend, especially if you live further south, doing something like a haze, because a lot of commercial facilities aren't producing hazes, and they're not producing these big sativas just because of the length of the flower time. So there's a different feeling and a different effect that you're going to get from these long flower sativa varieties that it's very, very enjoyable. It's some of my favorite smoke, actually, but you don't find them very often in a dispensary.
Wow, that's great. Ashton, thank you so much for sharing your passion with us. When we came down to visit your facility, it was very clear that the medicine that you're producing at Ball Family Farms has been grown with amazing love and pride. And your company, truly, Ashton, is a beacon of light, not only for other social equity applicants and minority-owned businesses, but also for those patients in our community that have been the recipients of your medicine. So as well, I'd like to ask you if you can hang out for a few minutes in the wings for a short little time while we chat with another guest here, and then I'd love to bring you back in with Todd and our other guests, and let's have a little free-form discussion a little bit. Can you stick around for that?
Absolutely.
Oh, awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure, truly. We're so thrilled. So now we have something very cool to show you next, and I'm pleased to introduce you to Vincent Patetti and Eric Robichaux from Green Goddess Supply. So Green Goddess Supply produces a line of high-quality smoke shop, head shop accessories. Now, the crown jewel in their product line is their amazing and unique personal home grow system, the Armoire. Now, it's a revolutionary new product in this space, already winning awards such as Cannabis and Tech Today magazine, naming it one of the top 25 most innovative cannabis tech products of 2021. You can go from sprout to harvest in as little as 60 days and consistently grow a quarter pound or more of yield with each cycle. Well, let's not wait a second longer to start talking about that. Vincent and Eric, thank you both so much for coming on our program. It's a pleasure to have you guys.
Awesome. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you very much for having us. Wow, there's quite a crew you have assembled here today.
Could you tell us a little bit about your company? And then I know you're planning to show off your armoire. So maybe talk a little bit about the company and then the armoire on what you have to do to set it up, what you got to do to get ready to start growing, what's involved, what do our consumers at home need to know?
I'll start, and then I'm going to turn it over to Eric. I have been growing since 1977. I was in college. I was in biology classes. We had landed the Viking lander. So I was doing an extraterrestrial biology report, and NASA was sending me their newsletter every week. And I have Kodak 8x10 prints of Mars. And I know they discovered microbes. They definitely discovered microbes in 1977. At any rate, I also had botany classes. And I had these bags of weed from Mexico. And they were, junk, right? But the seeds were these big, fat, plump, tiger striped seeds. And the botany class light bulbs started to go off. I bought a book called Marijuana Botany, not to drop any names, but by Robert Connell Clark. That got me going and growing outside in my backyard in 1977. It's been an amazing journey. And my mother passed of cancer in 1990. And so it's always been about medicinal for me ever since she was diagnosed. And used to bake her a pan of brownies every Sunday. And they were made from shade leaves, but they did the trick. At any rate, another story, another day. I used to be in the video game business. Eric used to be in the video game business. We've known each other for 25 years. Eric is part of the Massachusetts cannabis industry. Our headquarters is in Massachusetts, very close to Boston. I'm in California. I've grown outside, I've grown inside. People have been asking me for 20, 30, 40 years, just teach me how to grow one plant. Every time I try and grow a plant, it dies. Just one plant. Teach me how to grow one plant. So when they started passing these laws, I started thinking about, how do we bring it to the consumer? And then when they started to get more clarity with, well, if you grow it inside, it has to be like this, 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 and this. Okay. So we're going to bring it in the house. We're going to put it in some kind of box or chamber. I'm going to make it look like furniture. I will put a childproof lock on it. And how am I going to teach people how to grow, cannabis, sativa, indica, or hybrids in a 5-foot tall box? It's a long time, and it's a different process. So I started growing autoflowers in the late 80s, and cannabis rudularis is the third wheel here with cannabis, discovered in 1924 in Siberia. So we have Todd said, you have the varieties from hot spots, from cooler spots, and now from cold spots. So we have microclimates or macroclimates inside of our chamber. We like to say that the armoire is kind of a cocoon for your plant. And you can imagine keeping the heat at a certain point, you have to, it's not an automated system. We make what we call a technology assisted nurturing system. And I couldn't agree with Ashton more. Grown in soil, organic soil is the only way to go. It is a smoother, better, it's just better, better, better. So our system is soil-based, organic-based. Our customers are 50% boomers, 50% millennials, which happens to be the same people that spend 2 or 3 billion a year on home growing tomatoes and home growing their own vegetables and fruits, and that $3 billion is soil amendments, picks, shovels, and seeds, essentially. So I wanted to bring it in the house. I made it stealth. I don't call it stealth. It looks like a piece of furniture. Eric came up with the name. Eric enabled it to get to market. We haven't been able to attract one investor because people will say to us, why should somebody grow it at home when they can drive 10 minutes and buy it? And the fact of the matter is, to get new people in, autoflowers are perfect because they're impatient. They want it right now. So 60, 70 days, we teach them how to stress train it. We have a concierge service. It's free for 90 days. We will take you from seed to sprout to harvest to curing. And we will stress train it, teach you how to stress train it at about 21 days without doing any cropping whatsoever. Make it very simple for the beginner. But you can grow regular plants in there. You just have to have a little knowledge. But if you grow the autoflower and you follow our protocol, believe me, you'll come up with 4 to 6 ounces every 60 or 70 days, and that pays for the box immediately. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric to talk about the box a little bit and how it works and how we designed it, a little bit about the whole system.
Sure. All right. Thank you. So, basically, as Vincent was saying, he explained how this came about. People ask him, how do I grow a plant? that really has informed our entire mission. Our whole mission here is we're here to empower the average person to grow their own at home, and to do it relatively simply. The folks in this group are certainly the early adopters, right? When you talk about, from marketing analysis and that sort of thing, the early adopters will go out and buy all kinds of crazy hardware, and we'll MacGyver something together and figure it out and go through the painstaking process of constant, process improvement. What we're doing here is trying to empower the average person to grow quickly and simply. That's the sort of late majority. That's everybody else who just wants to, kind of like a car. I'm not a car person. I love cars, but I'm not like a mechanic, right? So I just walk in, I buy a car, I just expect to stick my key in, turn the ignition, and it just magically works and gets me from place to place. I don't want to know what's going on under the hood too much. So what we have done is put together a system where it's, and everybody here knows, growing cannabis can be incredibly complicated. There's so many variables, so many things that can go wrong. So what Vincent did was sit down and figure out, all right, how do I eliminate all these variables? How do I simplify this? We have the ability and the unique advantage of being able to stack the cards in our favor, so to speak. We can kind of cheat. And what he did was he basically engineered kind of a new process for growing by eliminating all these variables, simplifying it, and we know our environment. So now we don't have to say, well, we don't have to be all things to all people, all different sizes of grows, all different. No, we know our environment, and then we can just tailor everything to that environment. So we created, we've got our own unique light, and just the whole environment that we've built. And then, as he said, it was, we call it furniture inspired. It's not actually furniture, but it's designed to look like furniture, so that even your most disapproving aunt, wouldn't necessarily even know. And I've had people, I'll show you in a moment. I have a couple right here behind me. I have a cherry cabinet, and I have one called Modern Black. We have them in different finishes. We also have another finish, which was actually our original through all the prototypes and everything. This sort of rustic, unfinished, like barn board, shabby chic kind of look to it. So you get to pick your finish to match your decor. And so I have a couple of them behind me, but I've had people come over for dinner. I'm just doing this right. Yeah, I'll show you in a second. Don't worry. I've had people, I'm in my house doing this right now, sitting at my dining room table. I have them right behind me, basically in my living room. And people have come over for dinner. And if I didn't know how they felt about pot, I'm like, I just keep my mouth shut, and they have no idea these things are here. So let's go ahead and do a little show and tell. I can see you like trying to peek over my shoulder here. I'm going to disconnect this camera, microphone, and go to my regular built-in. So hopefully it's fine. All right, can you still hear me?
We still hear you.
All right, so let's do a little show and tell here.
Did get a little quieter, so maybe speak up if you can. Ooh, look at that.
Yep. And then you can see all my water bottles and junk on the floor, but I'm constantly doing R&D, so this isn't a normal setup.
Your home, your research lab, it's everything right there.
Exactly. So now, as we pop this baby open, let the camera readjust here, and I can kind of pan up and down. So we have our, and I'll show you inside the other unit. The other one's a production unit. This one I've been hacking it and prototypes and playing with stuff. But basically what you can see is we have a carbon filter up the top with the exhaust fan so that you don't have any smell in your house. We have our arrays of internal fans. We have our light. This is our newest a prototype of our newest generation light. And then I happen to be growing a little baby girl here. Hey, congratulations, it's a girl. It's that's black strap is the seed. It's an autoflower, growing in soil as mentioned. And then just to show you a little peek, this one is generally the same, very similar. It's this is our Modern Black finish.
So when you're pulling that door off, there's still a sheet of glass behind that door, right? Is that right?
Nope.
Oh no, okay.
Nope, there's no glass. So the door comes off, and then basically it allows us full access to the plant. So that I can even pull the whole plant out if I want. I get full access to it. I'm not hanging on the door. It's not in the way. I don't have, it's just the door comes right off. And that's by design on purpose. And then this one here, you can see I just finished up with the plant, so I have nothing in this one right now. But now we can see up here the fan, the carbon filter, and I probably should have lowered this.
Just finished growing, it's up high.
Let me just tune that down, and I'll show you. You can see up in the corner there is the LCD controller for the fan. So it'll give you a temperature, humidity readout, and it allows you to control the fan speed up and down and so forth. So we have
That's a negative pressure system. So the air comes in from the bottom, gets sucked in from the filters on the bottom, and they're micron filters. Bugs can't get through there. Nothing can get through there. The door is actually being sucked in. Everything's being sucked in, and everything goes up. Heat rises. It hits the scrubber. Any VOC, volatile organic compounds like terpenes, get eliminated by the carbon, and then the exhaust is clean. And you do have to replace the scrubber every year or so, depending on how potent or, how pungent your crop is.
Wow, this is so cool. I like the discrete factor. Good point, Eric, that not everybody coming over to your house is going to be so excited that you're growing. What I'd really like to do is I'd like to bring our other guests back on camera, because I think we're going to have some really engaging discussion here amongst all of our cultivation experts. So if we can, Brett, if you bring everybody back on, bring all our guests back on, and in fact, bring in our board of directors for those people that are here, and let's do a little roundtable Q&A about everything we've heard today. Now, I know that a couple of my guests wanted to talk to a couple of the other guests, so have at it.
That I really like the cabinets. I would steer away from auto-flowering genetics though, because they're not the nicest to smoke. And I'd like to point out that all cannabis will automatically flower if you put it in a 12-12 flowering environment. It's not a trick. And it's really easy to grow. I mean, I've been kind of saying that for a very long time. I was only a 13-year-old and I cleaned up my closet, and I've been growing ever since, minus the time I've been in prison. So I encourage people to do it. The only thing is that, your box is so small that most cannabis varieties grow way bigger than that really fast. So it's so limiting. So I would say bigger boxes. And the other thing is you should, and everybody should pay attention to what's called vapor pressure deficit, because if you're in a situation where I think I saw 29% humidity in that room, the plant can't breathe because the plant can only transpire with a certain amount of humidity present in the atmosphere. And one of the biggest mistakes that growers make is that they run their plants in a dry environment and they don't bring up the humidity level. Think of it like a car on a racetrack. You have a dry side and a muddy side, and you got to keep the plant all the way, because if you don't, you're not going to get that like really beautiful, waxy, supple leaf for the life of the plant. You're going to have a lot of problems. So, simplistic is definitely the best way to go, but vapor pressure deficit in an indoor growing environment like that is something that you definitely should address, and you should definitely put in a little humidifier, because it wouldn't take much to do it, and then you could really have a classy little compartment.
Well, definitely, we could have lots of discussions about this, but I will say this, that growing typical cannabis in the box is a longer journey. It's 9 weeks of flowering and so many weeks of veg. So if it's 9 and 9, that's 18 weeks. It's a long time.
That's not, it would never, and not in that little box. I mean, if you grew a plant from seed that was a regular, not auto flowering, high quality genetic, you could grow it with the lights on 18 hours for 2 or 3 weeks, and then flip it over to 12, and then ride it through the 56 days of flowering. You'd be finished. Yeah, same thing.
We have customers that have done it by accident. They've bought feminized seeds and they've had a 5-month journey.
The box looks beautiful. I love the layout and the creativity of it. I think it's the way of the future. And I think that creating an empowerment for people to be able to go buy a kit that has the light, the fan, the scrubber, everything right there is the way to go. I just, you need a little mother spot and a little spot for the clones, and then you've got a little rockin' you know, you got personal empowerment. They'll be growing forever at that point.
Well, we're at about 500 boxes in the field now, and some people about 2 boxes, 3 boxes, and some people have grown some beautiful plants. Some people have tried some humidifiers. Some people have tried some carbon, you know, some
CO2 packs and
yes, and other things. So, you know, customers try different mods now and then. Sometimes they kill their plants, sometimes they don't. But, you know, this is really for a novice, and they have to keep their house at a certain temperature to make this work. And
it's a lot cooler than the phototrons we had in the 80s. I'm sure you remember.
oh yeah, this thing actually works. People
right.
people love this thing. And you know, I'm more of a purist. I'm kind of like you know, autoflowers are the last thing on my mind. But for the average consumer, person that's never grown a plant, they can have success with this right away. And then after 4 or 5 grows, some of them will start to grow indicas or sativas, are mostly hybrids these days, but they will do it. But they do get stuck on a 5-month, you know, hamster wheel.
Right, but ruderalis was mostly hemp anyway. It was never popular. It's never been a good smoke. I don't know. Even Neville never pushed it. He was just trying to use it to dwarf plants.
I grew a gelato recently that is just absolutely amazing. I'd be happy to send you some or bring you some. You're in California, right?
A gelato autoflowering?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, the only side of it is when you breed in the hemp side of it, which is the side that causes it to autoflower, it just halves about the cannabinoids. And it's good for large scale oil production, but I don't think small scale flower production is where it's at. I mean, especially in such a cool, classy cabinet like yours, you could grow some of the best cannabis in the world with that thing. You know, you just got to give them a little more information about pre-grow time, but you know, you could really create the ultimate environment for a plant in such a small little area with just a little bit of equipment, more equipment. I think it's awesome, and I wish you nothing but success with it. I hope you empower millions of people to home grow.
It's a journey, isn't it? I mean, like at any point that you can get people started, then their mind starts working, and you know, then they're going to learn the things that you already know, Todd, that you've learned over all the decades. You know,
they're going to learn that they don't have enough room for the plants in their life, and they're going to, like every gardener's problem, you know, they want all the plants, they don't know where they're going to put them. But it's a beautiful journey, and I think that getting grow equipment into the hands of people is definitely the future. And you know, it's handing them the shovels, it's handing them the empowerment and the information, be able to just do it right out of, you know, and not have to put together a big complicated puzzle. You know?
Yeah, you're right. And the whole thing about, you know, civil liberties and freedoms and point well taken. Having a plant in your yard and going to jail is just that's just unbelievable.
Well, and you also don't want something a bird can shit on. You know, I mean, if it's going to be sterile medicine, I prefer not to have bird poop.
Yeah, bird poop, bug poop, lawnmower shavings, and all the duck. Yeah, you don't want all that stuff.
No, something like that's perfect for really perfect. You know, I tell people all the time, growing it yourself really can spare you from the chemicals that other people who are not growing it to smoke themselves or growing it to sell will put on the plants in order to make a sale and to not lose their crops. The best thing I think about legalization is that we're starting to get regulation, and I think consumers deserve a quality and a clean end product at the end of the day, and that's what legalization and regulation provides, in my opinion. But the step beyond that is the highest quality will be grown in small batches in cabinets like yours, probably, you know, because quality and quantity do not go hand in hand. So, you know, the best pot will always be the pot you grow yourself, in my humble opinion.
I agree.
Yeah. It's most satisfying as well, right? It's like going camping. I mean, you can make a grilled cheese sandwich over the campfire, but that's going to be the best grilled cheese you ever made because you made it yourself and you put your love into it. And it's just like the plant.
Yeah, I think that's the best part of gardening. It's all about the love, and you know, it teaches you how to take care of something just enough, but not too much. It teaches you how to plan in advance. It teaches you how to cycle your life. I have always joked that cannabis cultivation taught me more about the practical applications to how to deal with life than smoking it did, because, you know, I'd have to sit there and plan 10 weeks ahead for my harvest and figure out my dry time and, you know, figure out when I'd be able to smoke the stuff that I was just planting today. And it really helped me, you know, in life, because it showed me structure, taught me how nature works, And I think a lot of people still are very disconnected from that simpleness of it. You know, a lot of people don't understand when a cannabis plant starts to flower outdoors. They don't understand, you know, summer solstice or the new moon, or how they all affect the beginning of a cannabis flowering stage. And the only thing with autoflowers I have a beef with is that I feel that, you know, breeding really good plants like gelato 33, and the whole line of gelatos with a hemp plant really sets us back when it comes to quality breeding. And it's kind of like really been a breeder for over 30 years. I pride myself on the plants I make. And the idea of, you know, you make some perfect whiskey and somebody takes it and dumps half a gallon of water in it, you're just like, what are you doing, man?
Talk to some of the high-end breeders in the autoflower space. These guys are craft breeders. They've been working on it for 20 years. I mean, they're really.
I know. I know a lot of them too. You know, the point is though, is that it's still half hemp, and an autoflowering plant can't be kept as a mother. So it's kind of a worthless thing because it's always going to go in a flower no matter what you do. And it makes genetic selection really difficult. And the seeds they're making are by guess. They're not by experience, because again, they don't have mother plants. They don't have plants that are going to be like OG Kush, been around since the 90s. It just doesn't happen with autos. So it's different.
Generations, though. I mean, Mandalorian sells F9 seeds, and they make a point of it. You know that they
right.
Process.
But you know, Vincent, from growing, the further on you get from F1, the more genetic variation you get, and you know, more recessive traits come out. Rob Clark's one of my best friends. I run his social media. His book Marijuana Botany is great, but you know, F9 doesn't mean that it's more stable and more uniform. In fact, it means it's less stable, less uniform, and it's a more varied variety to choose from. But it's still half hemp.
They'll give you your choice. You can buy F1s, F2s, F3s, all the way up to F9s, and they'll tell you about all of them. So I'm just saying, these guys take.
I know how it works. I've been working. You know, not that I don't know. You know, but my point is, it's still always half hemp.
Yeah, but there's some incredible stuff at 30% THC coming out of there, and people are very happy with it. And you know, Ashton. I got to tell you, you're one of the only commercial commercial breeders that really kind of talks about organic. I
think organic cultivation is great. I've done a lot of hydroponic on backed in soil myself, because you get better terpene expressions with organic, like the living soil mixture. You get better cannabinoid expressions when you run just synthetic cannabinoids and pump it to the max. It's like a race car. But it, you know, I think more people are starting to understand that the nuances are in the terpenes, because without them, and that, you know, organoleptic quality of, you know, savor and scent, and that overall, like what draws us to food or wine or anything like a flower, it's how it smells and how it tastes more than the overall effect. And I think that now we're going to get into cannabis cultivars that are selected for quality and not convenience.
Right, but Ashton said, like, purple is in right now. So people buy with their eyes, just like when they buy a car, they buy with their eyes, and that's not a good thing. They need to buy not with their eyes. Just because purple is in, he's probably can't sell some green or whatever, but you know, it's
you know, purple's an interesting taste. You know, it's funny, I just got Mel Frank just sent me granddaddy purple seeds that he made, literally came in the mail today, that are going to go on the menu today. It is popular. It's flavonoids that are responsible for these colors. But even if you go back to the 70s, purple haze, I mean, was legendary. And you know, so these flavonoid expressions are not something that's kind of new in the cannabis industry. It's been something people have been chasing, that grape flavor, you know, for quite a while, you know. But other people like lemon, other people like gas, you know. It's just one of many flavors. I try to explain to people, cannabis is more like a rainbow or like a box of Crayola crayons, and there's all these different shades of color, and it's really none of better. It's just what you particularly like, which you'll find is best for you. And that's the most beautiful part about cannabis, is you can find the cannabinoid and terpene combinations that you prefer most.
What's very clear is that I love your analogy on the box of crayons too, because that brings it home for me. A whole box, you know, that box of 128 Crayola crayons, like everything different in there, right? But still a crayon. Clearly, there's a lot of different ways and to grow cannabis, and the point here of today's show is to encourage people that, hey, there's a bunch of different directions you can go. It's not so hard to get started. You know, this is something that you will get better with over time. It does take a little bit of time to, go through a few cycles and you learn what works, what doesn't. And you definitely, if you really take this up as a hobby and do this routinely, you're going to get better and better, and you're going to look to grow as a cultivator, to grow your own experience as a cultivator and try different things and head in different directions. And ultimately, you will be better and better the more cycles you have behind you.
Yeah, we have consumers making their own tinctures now. They buy a magic butter machine or something and they make their own. One woman told me, I got my whole family off of Big Pharma.
It's not insignificant at all right there.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any closing thoughts or anything that they really wanted to share about cultivation and encouraging our audience at home to get into this, give it a shot?
I would like to say that I believe that it's probably the best thing you can do for your health. It's more than just making your own medicine and, getting away from the financial burden that buying cannabis can be. But it's also the pleasure that you'll get from actually cultivating a beautiful plant, getting to know it. And I think that'll make your life a lot better, in my opinion. And, one of the extracts that I point people to is that you can mix the flowers from a cannabis plant with hemp seed oil, and the hemp seed oil will work to dissolve the trichomes right into the oil. And you don't have to heat it up. You can do it in your refrigerator. You can make incredible tinctures that are some of the most healthiest oils you can consume. And I encourage people to look into it.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. We really, and I just can't thank you all enough for coming out here and giving us some education on cultivation. I think this is really so important that people learn how to cultivate, especially when you live in a state that allows you to do it. You should absolutely do it. This stuff is expensive, and you should learn how to grow it on your own. So I'd like to thank everyone in our audience today for coming out to support Los Angeles Norml. We have a lot of new things going on, and I'd like to encourage you all to come to our website, lanorml, NORML.org, sign up for our free newsletter, and follow us on social media to stay abreast of the latest updates. I'd also like to remind you that we are a nonprofit, all-volunteer organization, and we would truly appreciate any financial support that you're able to provide to help keep the Zoom account running. And please consider becoming a supporting member of Los Angeles Norml at only $4.20 a month. And if you pay 1 year in advance, I'm going to mail you one of these very cool limited edition 50th year anniversary pin with our vintage Los Angeles Norml logo with the flower and the O. These are very high quality ceramic pins, strong magnetic backing, not going to ruin your clothes. And of course, the lettering is green on shiny gold lettering to honor our 50th year anniversary of cannabis advocacy. So they're very limited and not produced before. So please sign up, go to lanorml.org, click the donate now button. So from everyone at Los Angeles Norml, we would like to send a very, very big thank you to our special guest speakers and to those of you in the audience that joined us here today. So peace and love to you all. Thank you.